So, if it's okay, I'd like to just start by asking Andre, because Abru, am I pronouncing your name right, Abru?
Ebru, yes, perfect.
Um, Mom and I have been communicating a lot via email, but you and I really have not. So before we just start, I just want to kind of say, do you just have any questions for me about like what we'll be doing, the timeline of things that we'll be doing before we kind of launch in to the intake session?
Um, no, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. So did Mom explain to you today is what we call like the intake session, where
Mhm.
it's really sort of easy lifting for you guys because you did most of your homework already in those questionnaires that you sent me. It's really more of a time for me to kind of clarify and really nail down what you're looking for. Um, Starting next month, and maybe we could do it, we could do it at the end of every month, like the 23rd or whatever, whenever you're free. We'll be working more on your college essay. And I will, within the next couple of weeks or so, be giving you a college list that has 3 reach schools, 5 target schools, and 4 safety schools. Okay. That list is not, you must apply there. Of course, it's yours to do with what you want. You could say, no, I only like 6 of your choices, or you could say, yeah, great, I like all 12, but I also want to apply to 3 more reach schools. That's often what kids do because I think, everybody has dreams, right? I feel like the 3, 5, 4 breakdown is one that I can feel comfortable gives students lots of options because the college admissions process is so competitive now that I feel like it's more important to have 75% of the list, the 5 and the 4, being schools that I'm definitely sure you can get into, or where at least I think you have a 50-50 shot of getting into. Anything above in those 3 regions, I think you have less than a 50% shot, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply. Okay. Um, the safeties are also really important because it's more likely that you'll be getting more merit aid offers, meaning offers to attend with money attached from those safety schools, right? It's very rare that your reach school is going to make you an offer with a lot of money. So that's the other thing, some students get into their reach school but then financially decide that it's actually better to attend one of their safety schools. So that's the other reason why I like giving, a good number of safety schools to students so that you have not just academic choice, but financial choice too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then the last thing is, what you do with this list is really what you make of it. So I'm going to orient everything into like columns of a column for your intended major, a column for, let's say you want to play soccer, the athletics, that kind of thing. And then the website for that where you then will go in and do your homework, right? Because I can say I think these colleges are appropriate for you and you would like them, but you have to be the final judge. So once I hand that list over to you, there is still some work, then like your work starts again. Just like you had the work in the beginning of the process, after my work is done, then you still have some more work to say, yes, I like it, or no, I don't like it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'd like to kind of go over um on Andres's list first, in particular, the little like criteria grid, just to kind of really make sure that I'm sure about the kind of school that he wants. Because so medium and large is awesome. You're going to get a lot of opportunities at medium and large institutions. The urban is also fine, but I would say the thing that I would say kind of doesn't always go with an urban school is a very strong sports program, right? Oftentimes you see stronger sports programs with like that rah, rah, rah kind of attitude more at suburban and rural schools. Okay. So that's like one thing I just want to mention. If I had to if I gave you the scenario between a rural school with a strong sports program that you could really get into, or an urban school with like very little sports kind of to either participate in or to cheer, which one would be more attractive and which one would be less, and why?
Like a tough question because they both have what I want, but I would prefer more like the rural area with like the greater, like with like the more focused sports program. Yeah,
Okay.
and I would just like choose that because I just like love sports and I love the spirit behind it. Yeah.
Sure, that's great. I mean, sports is a real like community building type of activity, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's definitely the case. The reason I asked you that hard question, right, is because sometimes we're going to have to make that choice, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to have a school that marks off every single one of our must-haves or would like. So that's why I kind of like to get like a ranking. So now that I know, I'm just going to take notes on this. Now that I know like rural with sports is more important than urban without. That's really important for me to know. Okay, let me go back to here. Everything else, I think, I do think we're going to be able to get. I think, yeah, that I think was the only thing that really stood out to me as like, uh-oh, I think we might have a little bit of like difficulty. In terms of major, I noticed that like you've mentioned that you're interested in entrepreneurship, right? And um you like business and science, which is like a really, I think, cool mix of and very promising. Are there any aspects of either field? Because, sometimes schools have their own school of business, right? That you might have to apply just to that one. In terms of major, are you really undecided? And do you think, or is there any kind of discipline within science that you're like, yeah, no, it's got to be, I don't know, neurobiology, or it's got to be chemistry?
So for the science aspect, I think I'm still like a little undecided of what I want to do. But on the business side, I'm like more into topics or like niches with more analytical thinking. Like entrepreneurship, like it's completely just about the individual, or they could have a team. And I feel that's like really important to me. So I'm like leaning towards more the business side than science. Science.
Okay. So if a school that I thought was appropriate
Mhm.
had, say, a school of liberal arts where most likely you would study the sciences, because liberal arts just means like not a pre-professional, you might just major in biology or chemistry or something. And then, especially large schools, the larger a school gets, the more likely that they're going to have individual schools within it, the large university, like a school of business, a school of engineering, something like that. If you were going to say pick, it sounds like you would want to apply to the School of Business rather than a School of Liberal Arts.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and I'm just putting that down. So one thing that might be important, once I make this list, one thing that, and you may refine your thinking over the next few weeks as you're doing this. But if you decide, say, I want to do a minor in biology, even though I want to major in business administration or something like that, um, if you're applying to the School of Business, you might have to contact the admissions office and say, is it even possible that I can do this? Okay. Because when schools separate out subjects like that into a School of Business, School of Liberal Arts, oftentimes you're applying just to that school, right? And the school may say, sure, you can it's called cross-registering. You can cross-register at any of the schools. Others, uh, don't let you do that. So that might be one thing that, you want to, you'll have to kind of follow up on and see whether you can do that. Okay. Um, anything that I've said so far that sort of, makes you have a question or concern?
Um, uh, so far, no.
Okay. And it sounds like the soccer, the playing of it at least, would you be okay with playing on an intramural or club level and not competing like at division 1, 2, or 3?
That's that's fine. I would like prefer it more being like that and D3 rather than D2, D1.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna write that down too. I think that's smart, to be honest with you. Um, and D1, you would probably be getting recruited right now anyway. Um, but I think that just like really allows you to concentrate on your studies, and also because you're interested in entrepreneurship and business, you might want to think about an internship. One thing that I think, well, let me ask you, I mean, I would think it would be really important for a student with your interest to have the ability to do an internship while in school. So that is that something that interests you?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say for your career aspirations, making soccer more of the hobby to free up some time to do the internship would be smart. Um, okay, I'm gonna move over to mom's and just see whether her questionnaire and see whether anything um kind of stands out. One thing that struck me in reading both of your questionnaires is that both of you kind of think maybe Andres really wasn't able to live up to his potential during high school. What do you think was either the cause of that, or what do you think he will need in college that wasn't there in high school in order for that to change? And either of you, actually, I'd like to get both of your answers. Maybe Andres, you can go first.
I think mainly it was like my inability to like change and adapt. So what I mean by that is like I still procrastinate a lot. So they'll like obviously impact my studies and my homework and stuff. I think that's been like the big factor.
So by inability to change, you're saying like you were like that in middle school and you weren't able to change those habits from middle school to adapt to high school?
Yeah, I feel like I started slacking because I did like really good in middle school, so I didn't take it into consideration. Oh, I have to put like extra hard work. So yeah.
Well, let me just say, if it makes you feel any better, I think that that is very common. In fact, it's not just I think, I know that is very common because I've dealt with many, many students who, and especially boys, who happen to have had that same experience. And if for some reason, I guess middle school is often not very challenging to many students, and so they can get relatively good grades without that much effort. And so the other thing is they don't develop the study skills that they need in order to achieve in a more rigorous environment. So by the time they get to high school, they're really behind the eight ball. Whereas ironically, I'm going through this with my two nieces. I have one niece who's a seventh grader, gets 97s without studying. And then her sister is a fifth grader and she feels bad because she does have to study and she only gets low 90s. But we keep on trying to tell the fifth grader, you're going to be better off in high school because you have the study skills. So, once the older one gets to high school, she may be a little bit unprepared because she doesn't know how to study now. And oftentimes I find that true of boys. What do you think, April? What were Andres's, what needs to be changed in the college environment do you think, for him to live up to his potential?
I think if the college, first of all, I think if he goes undecided, it's going to be hard for him to get motivated. So I know it's very hard for kids this age to understand what their passion is or like what they would want to study. So in college, hopefully, if he can, as I put in my intake, if he can get some type of mentorship.
Yeah.
Even when I was looking for a cooperative schools, right, where he can do internships, so he can have more experience during college, work experience. I think it's going to help him. In high school, even though he goes to specialized high school, the workload is better than middle school. But I think he's missing this question, like, why am I studying? What is my goal? Because I know if he puts anything like, lately he's interested in reselling, right? Because something he's interested, he's willing to put his time, his effort. You can see the motivation difference. When I tell him, okay, you need to study for better SAT result, better grades, there is always a question mark. I think that's like lack of motivation. So for me, I think the college, when he goes to college, if he goes undecided, that's my scare. Like, I'm scared of if he goes undecided, without mentorship, without some type of schedule, discipline.
Yeah.
he may lose that again, like, what am I studying for? It's very hard for, for this age to understand what they want.
Yeah.
But at least he decided on entrepreneurship. Like, he feels like, oh, okay, this is something I will be interested.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the college will be great if it had some type of internship already in place.
Yeah. So one thing just to consider is that many colleges, in fact, most, will not require you to declare a major before you apply. Some do, certainly, but many do not. It's most common that students have to declare their major by the end of their freshman year. So just to, kind of keep that in mind, that's pretty much the standard at most American universities. But, I mean, your point is well taken. I do think, it's interesting. I mean, this is a little bit of an aside, but, in terms of like making that connection between the long-term future, right, and what I'm doing right now, I think is a very difficult thing for teenagers in general, right? Their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's responsible for planning, isn't fully developed until they're 25, which is why car rental agencies don't rent cars to people under 25, right? Because it's like, should I speed to go through that light? They're not thinking of the consequence of, well, what happens when I do that, right? And so, I mean, I think one thing, maybe you can both do is, so for example, I know that finances are a concern about how am I going to pay for college? Well, I'm not sure whether you know that many colleges, or I should say many outside private scholarships, as well as merit aid in the colleges themselves, use the SAT as the major criterion for how much money you get. And so, I think it is really essential that you get as high a grade on that SAT as possible if you also don't want to go into too much debt when you graduate, because there is a direct correlation. Higher SAT score, more money. And as somebody interested in business, hopefully you can appreciate that, right? I mean, certainly working with me on the college essay will also, right? I've had kids get full rides after working with me on their college essay. But that's not to say that they didn't have a good SAT score as well, right? And April, I know you get my newsletter, right? So my next newsletter, I'm going to be kind of announcing a bunch of things, but I have a webinar on March 13th that I just set up with a man named Dave Peterson, who runs a company called Scholarship GPS. And he has an online course that, if you're interested, I can send it to you. It's only $197, which I think is, pretty great. That basically takes students through the process of applying to scholarships. His own son, I think for 4 years of college, they only paid like $1,500. Because the kid got so many scholarships. And he has another kid who's younger than his son, who just graduated this past year, who got $111,000 in scholarships. So, I mean, look, you can work at McDonald's, right, to earn money, but as a teenager, but personally, I think it's way more effective use of your time to apply for these scholarships. So I'll send you that information after we're done. But yeah, I mean, Andre, so what do you think about some of those stats that I just threw at you?
I I think they'll all be great because it's free money. So um we can like see and try.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I do think also though, like anything that's worth it, it's going to take time, to apply for those scholarships because they don't just come up out of nowhere. The good thing is you're going to be starting your college essay pretty early with me, and you can often use that main college essay for your scholarship essay, that personal statement. So that'll kind of give you like a leg up. But one thing that I would do if I were you is spend like the next month or so just researching through his course. What are the scholarships that I would even be, a- a- available, that would be available to me and appropriate for me? Because obviously, not every scholarship is appropriate for every kid. For example, I'm a member of the National Italian American Foundation, which gives scholarships to students of Italian American descent or Italian descent. I don't think you could apply for that, but I bet there's scholarships for kids of Turkish descent, right? So there's a lot of different scholarships out there that I think are at your grasp. You just have to set aside the time to look for them, you know?
I have a question. Without a good SAT score, what do you think about these scholarships? Because, like you said, it's time. I mean, we can make the effort definitely because at the end it's scholarship, but like how much SAT and grades play a role in it?
I think they're all different. Some won't even ask for your SAT score. If your SAT score is not great, I would probably try to put more time into those applications. Some may just say, like, for instance, on a podcast that I was listening to where Dave Peterson, this guy from Scholarship GPS, was interviewed, one of the speakers said that the applicant got $10,000 more a year from the college just for providing an SAT score or ACT. It didn't even matter what the score was, but she had to prove that she took it. So look, I'm sure there are other ones, maybe by top science corporations that say, no, you need a 1500. Well, you're not going to apply to that one. So I think there's a lot of different ones out there, and you just have to read the requirements carefully and see if you're qualified for that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah. I'm gonna definitely watch the webinar and check the website.
Yeah. So let me just, I know that was a little bit of a detour. Let me get back to the parent one. I feel like there's a little bit different in terms of geography. Do you know, did you read each other's, by the way? I should have assigned you to read each other's. So mom prefers a maximum 4-hour drive from New York City.
Close to me, yes.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I understand. And Andre says no limitations at all in terms of geography, although he's not sure if he wants to study in the West or Midwest. So let's talk about this a little bit, because I do think this is really important, because I don't want to go ahead and say put a lot of, schools in California on your list if you're not going to wind up applying to them. So, I totally understand why the 4-hour limit, and I think that that's reasonable. Andres, let me just ask you, how do you feel about that? The 4-hour drive limit?
Well, it's fine to me, because when I think of like places close to New York, I think of like Boston, and Boston has some colleges. For example, Boston University is, of course, great.
Yeah.
But I also kind of disagree, because I do want to see what IB can get me, and to see if I can actually go to Europe. But that's like, I would like preferably like to stay in the US.
Okay, wait a second. Do you mean applying to schools where your degree comes from a European school, or do you mean study abroad?
Study abroad.
Okay. We'll put study abroad on the side for now, because I'm just talking
Yeah.
about where your degree is going to be from. Okay. So
Okay.
in terms of like staying within, so a 4-hour radius would be from about Boston to about going over to Western Massachusetts into part of upstate New York. Maybe we'll put some SUNYs on your list because you're probably going to it's going to be cheaper for you to go to a SUNY, right? Down to maybe like part of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. I'm thinking about Drexel for you, which Drexel is a large urban school, but it has an amazing internship program there. And then maybe down to like DC would be like the southernmost limit. So how does that sound to you, Andres?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like but I wouldn't like limit myself to that just yet because I'm like still unsure. I'm I'm still unsure of if I want to go around home or if I want to go somewhere like farther. But I definitely not like all all the way like where the California is.
Okay, so to me, I don't consider Boston and DC around home.
Yeah, but
I don't know. What do you think? Ebru, do you want to chime in?
So the reason he can go anywhere he wants. The reason we chose besides like it's easier to reach him, also it's like in state, out of state,
Yeah.
tuition, like financial. So I think Andres will have to understand if he wants to apply out of state, he will have to work harder so that like the SATs and such, so that he can get more scholarship money, more merit scholarships. So apart from that, like not because he cannot do it, he can definitely go to other colleges. My main concern is like financial, more than like, oh, I have to reach him. Of course it will be a big plus, but if he says I want to go, there is not like we're not going to say, oh no, you cannot go.
Right. I see. I mean, my personal view is there are plenty, I mean, the majority of schools in the United States are in that Boston to DC corridor, right? So there are plenty of schools in that corridor that I could find for you. The question would just be like, should I even bother putting on schools from Florida, Georgia? You mentioned not California, but of course there are places on the East Coast that are outside the 4-hour, Maine, unless there's, I think, a burning desire from you, Andres, to go really far. I consider more than 4 hours. Actually, I consider more than 8 hours really far away. Anything that like takes more than a day's car ride, I consider that really far away. Unless there's a burning desire on your part to go that far, I don't know if there's a reason to put schools like that on your list. What do you think?
yeah. Um, I just been like seeing a lot of colleges and universities near like Midwest that are huge and I have like a lot of like spirit
You do.
and yeah, and it just looks like amazing, but I'm still like unsure of where to look. So like we could definitely start with this 4-hour
Okay.
limit. This is like
Okay.
perfect.
I mean, just know that those schools in the Midwest get this kind of weather that you're having now every single year and way more snow. I mean, I had a friend who went to Michigan who, great football program, total like rah, rah, rah sports. I mean, he said when he would go outside, I mean, not to get too gross, the snot would freeze automatically in his nose. His tears would freeze. And they have tunnels underground for students to get to classes for when it's wintertime. So, anybody who's going to go to school anywhere in the Midwest really needs to think about, how do I handle winter?
Yeah. Okay, so then maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, look, if you wind up playing Division III, and maybe you can visit those schools during games. You never know. Maybe we didn't talk about this. How do you feel about fraternities?
They like kind of rubbed on me off the wrong way
Oh,
because
okay.
I saw like news of people getting forced into doing something that they didn't want to do. But that's just like on the news.
Yes, and
So yeah,
not all fraternities are like that, like in terms of drugs and alcohol. There are, of course, some, and those are usually the ones that make the news. But then fraternities are also a way where students can make friends with like-minded people.
yeah,
And fraternity organizations are another way, because if there's a chapter at, say, University of Wisconsin-Madison, you may wind up going there for a fraternity event, right? So just because you're not going there doesn't mean that you won't ever experience that kind of experience. But yeah, I mean, I think the winter thing is the big thing for the Midwest, is that you have to be okay with a lot of snow and a lot of cold.
And schools in Florida, Carolinas.
I'm sorry, you cut out a
Florida or Carolinas, because I didn't know that he was interested in further colleges. The Carolinas, Florida,
Florida.
Yep. So, it's funny you mentioned Florida, because I was just doing some research on online programs. And not that yours is an online program, but I was shocked at the differential in prices for out-of-state students in Florida, relative to, say, out-of-state students in New York, right? Like per credit, in New York schools were like around 300 to 400, whereas in Florida they were around like 700 to 800 per credit. And I think that's because Florida's really subsidizing its in-state tuition through making out-of-state students pay a lot more. So I mean, it's definitely a possibility. There are also private schools where that's not going to matter, right? In-state, out-of-state doesn't matter for private schools. But I don't know. You guys could either tell me now or wait. Should I put on Carolina, Georgia, Florida schools because they're outside of that 4 hour, or should I not?
I have a question here. Will it be a better option to have the 12 schools closer to home, where we said, like on the north, east side, east coast, and then based on that criteria, we do our own homework, and then look for out-of-state schools similar to the criteria that you are giving us, and then find colleges. Meanwhile, we can also have this conversation going. Will that work? What do you think?
Sure. that we could do that. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
You also have some more time to think about it. And perhaps, you can use my list that I give you through the Google Sheets as sort of a template to think about other options farther south.
Mhm. Because out of state, I think it will be good idea to visit. Am I correct? And then by the time spring comes, like we may have 1 or 2 schools in his mind, like with soccer, and then we also know your list,
Mm-hmm.
and then we already finished some school trips here, visits here,
Right.
close to home, and then we can go out of state.
Yeah, I mean, generally, what I try to encourage families to do is to visit the safety schools first. Because, let's say I put, I don't know, let's say I put Villanova on your list. And Villanova, given your pre-SAT score, is probably a reach for you. And Villanova is going to be really hard to get into. However, if you got into Villanova, assuming you got decent financial aid, you would probably even go without visiting because you've heard so many wonderful things about Villanova. So the reason I encourage families to visit the safeties is because, unfortunately, many students don't get into their reach schools. They get into about half of their targets, and they probably get into most of their safeties. So you really want to be going to your safeties to say, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get in here. Would I like it if I did go here? So that when May comes, not this May, next May, you'll be able to tell the schools, a definite answer because you've already been to maybe 75% of the schools on your list.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had some planned for this spring. Would you recommend us to visit them no matter what, or if it's not on the list? I mean, we'll have the list before then, definitely.
You will. You'll have it in the next couple of weeks. I guess depending on what schools are on your list, do you already have like the hotel reservations and everything?
No, it's just like a one-way, like Binghamton. Drexel was on the list.
I'm glad Drexel's on the list. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, again, Binghamton might be a little bit of a reach. Binghamton's now since the pandemic, it's gotten even more selective to get into. So I might like diversify some of the SUNY offerings on the list. But certainly, I mean, I always recommend, like, for these initial very first visits, is try to even go places where you don't have to book a hotel room. So it's not costing you an arm and a leg to go, just to even see, do I like, maybe you've never been on a really big campus before. Do I like a really big campus? Do I like a really small campus? Well, what's the difference? How do I feel, right? So that once, when are you taking your next SAT?
My school's gonna like make everyone take it in March,
Right.
but I'm gonna take mine individually like May, June.
Okay. Are you studying for that March one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, really try to study hard for that one, only because the May, June ones for juniors are really tough to study for because you often have a lot of other exams to study for at the same time.
So March is important. Yeah, he went to Villanova actually last year with school.
Oh, interesting. How did you like that?
Good. The food was super good. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be, actually, I did once have a student a couple of years ago who that was like one of her top criteria was she needed healthy food options. And I was like,
Yeah, I agree. But
yeah.
but like the buildings and the like this had they like had this huge walkway going around. It was like an amazing campus.
It is. My niece's son, my cousin's son goes there and loves it. He's a sophomore now. Yeah, he really likes it. So, yeah, good. All right. Well, guys, I think I have enough information. Are there any other questions that you want to ask me, or any other things that you think I should know before I sort of embark on this process of creating your list?
Mm, I would say I do love like that sports spirit, but I'm not sure if I want to go like super far from the city. Like I'm fine with suburb and urban, but I'm not sure if I like really want to go so far away.
Right. So, like, suburbs is okay. I noticed that you crossed out rural, you searched urban, but you kind of left suburbs blank. So,
Yeah.
to me, that I took it as I'll take the suburbs, but I won't be super psyched about them. But I really don't want to go where there's like cows outside my window.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that would be tough for a New York City kid.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. Well, again, there's so many schools within the Northeast that I think I'm definitely going to be able to find you 12.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sounds
right,
good.
great.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And look, I know sometimes, like in the next couple of days or so, you might come up with, oh gosh, I forgot to tell her that. It takes me a while to create these lists. So if there's something that you realize that you forgot to tell me, just shoot me a quick email and let me know.
Okay, we'll definitely do. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Great to talk to you both. And Andres, I'll see you next month.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.